to join the call now, would they be able to get on?
No.
No?
I have to go over here and click this broadcast.
Okay, so we're gonna wait on that for 5. We'll wait till about 2 minutes, 2 or so.
What is today, the 5th? Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
Did it go?
I'll talk to you later with the commission officer.
Ooh, it's showing it, huh?
We'll see how many people are on. Well, maybe. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this Port of Los Angeles video news conference. I see some participants joining here now, and we will also be on YouTube as well. In a moment, Executive Director Gene Soroka will be sharing some opening remarks. After that, he'll be taking questions from the media. If you're on the Zoom platform, you can ask your questions by typing them in to the Q&A section on your screen, or by, quote, raising your hand on the Zoom platform. So please include your name and affiliation when asking a question. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you can send an email to us at askgene@portla.org. We are monitoring that inbox for questions. We've already received a few questions in advance from a few media folks. So at this point, we will turn this over to Gene Soroka, Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Philip, and good morning, everyone. Today at the Port of Los Angeles, we have 10 ships in port, 8 container, 1 tanker, 1 U.S. Navy hospital ship, Mercy. 3 cruise ships are at anchor outside of the port area and 4 drifting. In the month of April, the Port of Los Angeles moved 689,000 TEUs, which was 6% below last year and our all-time April in the 113-year history of the Port of Los Angeles. Also notable is that this is more than a 50% increase than our 450,000 TEU lift in the month of March. Looking downline for the remainder of quarter number 2 in year 2020, we see 28 void sailings, which is a tremendous number, yielding softness in the market through the months of May and June. Retail continues to delay, postpone, and in some cases cancel orders. Fast fashion has struggled with a 50% drop in business overall. Auto and related parts are also down precipitously. Some economists have stated that we may not see better economic activity until the first quarter of year 2021, and therefore a possible uptick in international freight moving inbound through the Port of Los Angeles in quarter 4. We've also seen quite a drop in United States exports to Asia and especially China that were in line to take advantage of the phase 1 trade deal with China. Recyclables, agricultural products, and heavy-duty machinery all down as well. Across our other lines of business in the first quarter of this year, scrap metal down nearly 50%, steel volume down 70%, petroleum volume down about 6%, cruise passenger down 17%, but in the first quarter alone. And as most of you are aware, the industry itself has said to take a pause for the next 2 months. And fruit imports, mostly those perishables coming northbound from the west coast of Latin America, are up 5% so far. Auto volume is up 46%, but most of that on the back of acquiring new business here at the Port of Los Angeles. The governor earlier this week and over the weekend has talked about a soft reopening of the state of California, and we will see some sectors doing just that with curbside online pickup delivery to slowly start to open California's economy. Most of the work will be done at the county and municipal level to make sure that on the ground health services information is taken into account as we look at this. The cargo volume in general at the Port of Los Angeles is still moving at about 80% of normal for this time of year. Unfortunately, with that, less cargo means fewer jobs. And longshore labor shifts at the Port of Los Angeles are down at this juncture by 19% compared to last year at this time, and 21% compared to the 3-year run rate of shift work that we have here at the Port of Los Angeles. Truck pulls are also down, but most KPIs across the port on the work that we do with our vessels, rail, truck, and ongoing movement is going very smoothly. And I must credit the work of the Los Angeles Marine Terminal operators and all involved in the supply chain for this great effort as we try to work through this crisis. Once a week, we put a drone up in the air for public safety purposes to make sure our large 7,500 acres and 43 miles of waterway is being operated in the fashion that the Port of Los Angeles sets out to do, as well as the United States Coast Guard and so many of our allied agencies. As you can see, looking at our terminal tarmacs across the board, plenty of space as our country reopens its economy in the coming months to be able to draw more cargo and distribute with speed to the interior of the United States. The work in all these areas and the connectors continues to be monitored by the Port of Los Angeles, its Port Police Department, and its logistics experts to ensure this ongoing fluidity remains case every day. The outlook for the remainder of 2020, as I mentioned, will be relatively soft. To put all of this in perspective, we had an elongated Lunar New Year with the respective dip in cargo volume afterwards. We have missed spring fashion season. So our fast fashion customers, as noticed by J.Crew earlier this week and some other retailers who have seen a precipitous drop in volume, are struggling. Next, we are on the cusp of looking at what the cycle time will be for back to school. And we're coming up on that pretty quickly, but also having an understanding of where the school year may be, not only here in California, but the schedule for the school year across the United States will also drive some of this container work as well. Crop season is just beginning in the Midwest and Upper Midwest, the Red River Valley, and that will be very important. As noticed, a bumper crop of soybeans this year from Brazil, pushing cargo back to China and other Asia locations, may have an impact on this particular agricultural product and others going down line. So we'll continue to watch all these market signals and the indicators. But again, cargo flow is about 80% of normal. Shift work for our longshore units, our truck drivers and their actual pulls are also averaging about 80%. We're watching very closely on the warehousing side, where we have approximately 1% vacancy in our more than 1.8 billion square feet of warehousing throughout the Southland, from the harbor through the Inland Empire, Moreno Valley, et cetera. Logistics Victory Los Angeles is now in its second month of operation, and one of its key milestones was attained with an announcement last week of a contract between the Honeywell Corporation and the City of Los Angeles for 24 million N95 NIOSH certified face masks. They will be produced in Phoenix, Arizona, and distributed over a 24-month period through the Victory Los Angeles program. The first 100,000 masks are expected to be delivered to Los Angeles no later than May 31st. This is important on three levels. Number one, proximity. While others clamor to international markets and to middle people, we have gone directly to manufacture with a facility that is right down the 10 freeway, 6 hours from our Los Angeles hospital market. Second is certainty. And as I mentioned, with the production schedule that we have worked on with the Honeywell Corporation, we have specific numbers of units that will be delivered to Los Angeles each month for the next 24 months. And by November, we will wrap up to a steady state production and delivery of 1.2 million masks per month. And third is affordability. As much has been made in the media about the cost of these masks and other personal protective equipment supplies, we have been fortunate enough to reach agreement with the Honeywell Corporation for 79 cents a unit plus applicable sales tax. Now that cost to the penny will be passed directly on to our hospitals and frontline medical workers. There will be no markup, there will be no margin on this product, and we will use the great Port of Los Angeles, LAX Airport, and our vast domestic distribution capabilities to speed this cargo through directly to our frontline medical workers. Love LA also continues to work in other areas of PPE requirements, and we are still in great need of those nitrile exam gloves, face shields, isolation gowns, preferably level 2, IV drips, and so many other products. So if you have information on supply, or if you are a supplier, and if you need products at your hospital or healthcare facility, please visit us at lovela.org. That's LOVLA.org. Very soon, we will be publishing those demand signals, as well as the thoroughly vetted supply opportunities from vendors, in addition to what we are creating as the Los Angeles stockpile of PPE supplies. And with that, Philip, I'll turn it over to you for the Q&A portion of this discussion.
Thank you, Gene. The first question comes from Costas Paris at the Wall Street Journal. Is the port changing any operations to adapt to lower volumes, any terminals temporarily closing or such?
Hi, Costas. No, we are not closing any terminals. What we're looking at specifically is how we adapt to this changing supply chain. We've been hit with 2 punches. Number 1 was the ill-advised tariff policy coming out of Washington, and 2 is this prolonged pandemic that has economic implications of which we haven't seen since the Great Depression. We've long said that here at the Port of Los Angeles, we will need to reinvent ourselves. Because of the trade policy, it is my estimation, we will lose about 15%, 15%, of our imports over time as they migrate to other origin locations that may have quicker paths westbound through the Suez Canal. But at the same time, it may give us an opportunity to reduce our cost to serve by being better balanced, eliminate some empty repositioning requirements in the Trans-Pacific, and have better round-trip asset utilization for our service providers. So that work stands in front of us and part of the competitiveness group that I have put together across the West Coast and with our various stakeholder groups, including labor. Terminals may close gates from time to time based on volume. And again, at 80% of our normal traffic, we have to match up with what our cargo owners need and how our terminal operators will be accepting and distributing cargo as it comes through their gates. But rest assured, the Port of Los Angeles is open and all terminals are in operation.
Thank you. So just a reminder to the media participants, feel free to put your questions in either in the Q&A or raise your hand. It looks like several of you are using the Q&A, and I can just read these questions. The next question is from Stas Margaronis, American Journal of Transportation. In April, the 19,200 TEU MSC Anna docked at Long Beach and Oakland, making it one of the largest vessels to call at North American ports. If the trade downturn continues into 2021, do you see ocean carriers consolidating their services onto these mega container ships, 18,000 TEU and larger, to reduce costs and sailings?
That really is up to the individual liner companies and their consortia, but obviously supply and demand will drive the waterborne architecture of our vessel services coming to and from Los Angeles, making sure that we have good utilization on these ships. So on a per sailing basis, the companies can maintain positive cash flow is of paramount importance to this industry. So we'll continue to monitor the demand signals of our industry, both inbound and outbound, and help match that with the needs of our liner shipping companies. I can tell you from all the conversations we have in video meetings and have had over the past 2 weeks with the most senior level folks in this industry, across the board, CEO contacts directly have stated that they are watching the supply demand curve very closely, and that will determine how they set the schedules for the vessels. What types of vessels? The workhorse vessels, we've said for a long time, will be those types that can maintain a fixed weekly departure out of Asia. That is very important to this industry, and the speed by which we can work the cargo here and get that ship back out towards its Asia return is of great importance to the liner companies, while keeping health and safety of our labor force at the top of mind always.
Next question is from Eric Watkins at Lloyd's List. The port's container throughput has been hit in several ways. Supply and demand have been out of sync and are far from being balanced. What really is the key to getting supply and demand back in balance What are your projections about the time frame for that to happen?
Difficult question. Again, it really depends on consumer demand right here in the United States and the ability for us to start fulfilling the requirements along with China on the phase one trade deal. We need some certainty on our exports, whether they be agricultural, machinery based, or other strong export opportunities that exist here today. And on our side, 2/3 of our economy is based on you and me going out to the store and buying products. While internet sales are up across the board with many who provide that level of omni-channel distribution, we're still lacking the full force of the US consumer to go out to the store, dine at our restaurants, and purchase our goods and services. How long will that take? As I said at the opening, I don't see at this point in time any real noticeable uptick in traffic until the fourth quarter of this year. And that is only predicated on designs to reopen America's economy, county by county, state by state. Remember, even as we open up various sectors of our economy, 25% at a time, as some have said, that doesn't mean that the owner of that business brings along 25% of their costs. They still have to pay rent, utilities, insurance, and a litany of other requirements that are also employee-based so folks can go back to work. So this is really, at this juncture, a roll of the dice to see exactly where we are. But we do have an added advantage with the Port Optimizer of being able to see booking information across the industry and have the opportunity to aggregate it. So looking at the order cycle process from our retailers, which on occasion is between 90 and 20 days, and our view of the booking system across the Trans-Pacific industry, we'll have an early start as to when that demand starts to grow. And we'll have the unique opportunity to position our talent and our assets, those of our service providers, more quickly than anyone else.
The next question comes from Matt Leonard at Supply Chain Dive. Can you comment on the current state of the empty container balance?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for the question. We saw earlier from the flyover that we do on a weekly basis that the terminal tarmacs look very good. They're fluid. There are plenty of space on the ground to handle more cargo. We've had a little bit of a surge in empty returns earlier this year. That's all been cleaned out. But again, I credit the Los Angeles Marine Terminal operators for making sure we have a beat on this situation. And some companies such as MSC has really answered the bell in making sure that when we do need to, we can evacuate empties and pull them back to pre-position those containers for the next uptick in manufacturing in China based on the demand side here for the US consumer. I feel today that we're in very good order.
Just a reminder that, again, you can use the Q&A to type in your questions or raise your hand. The next question is from Eric Martin from Bloomberg News. If cargo flow is at 80% of normal, the reverse inference would be that it's down 20% from normal. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And with the numbers that we put out just this morning, Eric, the month of April saw nearly 689,000 TEUs, which was 6.5% down compared to April of 2019, which was also the greatest volume of cargo we've seen in the month of April in our 113-year history. Based on the first quarter of this year, the volume at the Port of Los Angeles was down 18.5%. And now if we add in the April stats, we're down about 15.5%. On any given day, looking at the traffic moving through the Port of Los Angeles, we're doing about 80% of normal volume for this time of year.
Next question is from Margaret Carrero at KNX. Do you have concerns about an even deeper loss of longshore jobs at the port moving forward?
Hi, Margaret. And yes, always. The longshore workforce is the heartbeat of this port complex. And with less cargo, it does mean fewer jobs. So trying to keep these volumes elevated, this port fluid, so we can continue to move critical goods to our frontline medical workers, those in the construction industry, and others who are trying to keep this economy moving until we open the state and the country back up is absolutely job number one. So we're watching this every day. And again, it is our longshore men and women, the marine clerks, the 4 people, as well as our truck drivers, our electricians, our plumbers, So many folks who continue to go to work as a critical workforce every day to keep this great asset of our nation open for business. I appreciate the question, Margaret. Thank you.
On the topic of longshore work, a question from Chris Ancarlo. I'm not sure of Chris's affiliation. With 19% fewer shifts, what sort of relief is available for longshore workers? Anything specific from the port or union, or is it state unemployment?
Thanks for the question, Chris, and this is very thoughtful. Please remember that every job that is not filled today impacts our families, our children, our ability to put food on the table, and the work that must be done for savings for further education of our kids. We take this area very seriously. But for registered longshore workers, and this is part of the great ILWU, if there is not enough work on the terminals today, an individual terminal may hire as they need for the volume that's coming through. And if a registered person is not on the job, they will go straight back to the hiring hall to look for another job opportunity at this port complex between Los Angeles and Long Beach. Much has been reported in the media recently that there have been layoffs at this Port of Los Angeles. And again, for registered workers, they have the great ability through their collective bargaining agreement to go back to the hiring hall and seek other work within the port complex. Again, we want more cargo. We want everybody out for work. The casuals are also very important to us, apprentices in other industries. These folks may not have steady work in their regular or day jobs, and they're coming out in record numbers to be able to apply to fill job opportunities at the port. And we need to keep pushing for more cargo to get those men and women out on the job as well. But these are not layoffs for registered workers, and they are not pushed to the unemployment line. Thanks, Chris.
We have one hand up. It's from Eric at Bloomberg. We're going to unmute you, and Eric, you're welcome to unmute yourself. I'm not sure if we answered your question, but if you're still there on the line, feel free to go ahead and ask your question. And if there are any other questions at this point, please submit either by Q&A or raising your hands. We've just got one or two questions left here. So Eric, you are available.
Yes, thank you. I think that you addressed the question in large part, but specifically the 80%, comparison for the month of April, or what point of comparison is that based upon? Thank you.
I'll carry you through the numbers, Eric, in some detail, maybe getting into the weeds, but I think this is important to you. In the first quarter of this year, 2020, the cargo we moved was 18.5% lower than the cargo for the first quarter of the year 2019. In the month of April, as I've just announced, the 689,000 TEUs that move through our Los Angeles marine terminals represents a 6.5% reduction from April of just last year. And please know that April in 2019 was the highest volume April in our 113-year history. If we cobble all those numbers together right now, our actual performance is down 15.5% for the first 4 months of 2020 compared to 2019. My general statement of looking across this harbor every morning and evening during drive time for me is that we're moving about 80% of the normal cargo for this time of year. I report to you after the fact our numbers as we have them come in to the media.
One other question from Eric Watkins at Lloyd's List. With respect to a blank sailings, what exactly would the port lose with a blank or empty sailing? There's been estimates of about 300,000 per blank sailing. Is that figure accurate?
It really depends, Eric, but I'll give you some stats that are quite staggering. First off, on your question specifically per sailing revenue impact to the Port of Los Angeles, based on our average TEU exchange of approximately 10,000 units per vessel call, and our price of about $40 per TEU, every missed sailing, void or canceled, is about $400,000 in lost revenue to the Port of Los Angeles. But the story is much greater than that. As you have read, so many folks now are seeing the impacts, whether it be on quarterly earnings announcements, their decisions on personnel, what we see are the knock-on effects across the industry. I happen to be an expatriate living in China during the SARS epidemic, so I know firsthand what it is like to live through a viral episode such as what we are right now, but this may be 10 to 15 times greater than what I witnessed back in 2002 and 3. The number of folks who have fallen ill, those who have perished, the closure of business, the closure of the United States economy throughout its 50 states in this union is something we have never witnessed before in our lifetimes. The levels of unemployment, the creation of funding from the United States Treasury, the federal government, all the way down to the taxpayer is of epic level. The cost or price tag for SARS was estimated by economists at 40 billion US dollars during that time. This will be 10 to 15 times greater across the supply chain and its parallel businesses. We must all rally. We are prepared here at the Port of Los Angeles to help reopen our economy. One reason I am so proud that we continue to move about 80% of the cargo that we normally would at this point in time is that we've got this machine revved. And as cargo continues to increase, when the economy opens and we get those demand signals, we will be ready to help this country recover. The work that we are doing right now on the technology side will enable us like no other port in the nation to be able to drive that business just that way, to bring more people onto the job. And please know that while cargo volume is soft by our standards here at the nation's largest port, we continue with infrastructure projects. As I've announced previously, we have more than $367 million worth of infrastructure projects that are continuing. They employ more than 3,000 construction workers. They're also keeping design folks, engineers, and so many others on the job to make sure that we meet the requirements of our customers, even through economic cycle. Now, it doesn't come without pain. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti has said that employees who are eligible in the city of Los Angeles will be furloughed. And I have said I want to be on the top of that list, to take 10% of my pay right off the top, if it can help the city move back and help our recovery as a nation. So there is much more than just what one ship call does here at the Port of Los Angeles, although very important to the top line of what we're doing. But there are all these other effects that we have seen and have been recounted that are so meaningful right now and are allowing us in our daily meetings every morning at 0900 via Zoom with my leadership team to make sure we are ready every step of the way.
Follow-up question from Matt Leonard at Supply Chain Guide. There have been some news about intermodal volumes struggling. What are you seeing with shippers moving cargo out of the port with intermodal versus trucking freight? Has the pandemic changed the thought process there?
Yeah, interesting and good question. We just went through some stats on our dashboard yesterday with our finance team via Teams video meeting. And what we're seeing is that overall intermodal volume percentage of the cargo that's moving through the Port of Los Angeles looks very normal. Some terminals have a higher level of intermodal proportion than others and are driving cargo to the interior of the country, which is very important to us right now because there is a paucity of ocean containers in the Midwest. And our farmers need those containers to start loading up with perishable commodities to get them out to their customers in Asia and find new markets. And this is part of the recovery that'll be very important as we help those companies and those farm community members reconnect with their customers overseas. So the ability to drive cargo to the interior with speed is very important now, as it will be with the recovery. But I don't see any real change in percentage splits between the cargo that's moving here directly to Southern California and that with which has on carriage directly in ocean containers to the Midwest, or the transload percentages happening in the Inland Empire today. Great question, we appreciate it.
That is the end of the questions. So Gene, if you wanted to just close here and then we'll thank the media for participating.
Yeah, this has been a very difficult time for all of us on so many levels. Whether you work here on the docks or are associated with the supply chain industry, if you work in the retail community, on our farms, in our factories. But the work that the city and this Port of Los Angeles are doing are all trying to keep the economy moving as best we can from our small patch. And I must explain to you that the work that we're doing in the IT segment and creating these software platforms that not only build off the nation's only port community system with the General Electric Wabtec Port Optimizer, we have now developed the Medical Optimizer. And this has all been driven by Logistics Victory Los Angeles and the mayor of LA appointing me as the city's chief logistics officer, with the primary goal of driving these much needed healthcare supplies and protective equipment to our frontline medical workers at our hospitals. That is job number one today. We're so proud to see all the volunteers in the Harbor Department and downtown City Hall contributing to this monumental effort. We've made a great purchase so far in working directly with the manufacturer of products that our hospitals need. Our idea is to build a stockpile that these hospitals can draw from. We won't be the answer to everyone's inventory requirements, but hopefully, as times are difficult, we can help. Going forward, we can assist with replenishment and fixing a medical supply chain that is broken today. By bringing technology, a savvy look at procurement, and the ability to create a level of certainty in the supply chain, we see that right in front of us. And out of this crisis, I see this as one opportunity to help develop that supply chain within Southern California and hopefully points beyond. Again, if you have interest in helping us, please visit our website at lovela.org. That's LOVLA.org. If you have supplies, there's an intake form, the ability to upload your pricing sheets and your spec documents for your products. If you're in need of these supplies, please give us the types of products you need and the volume you need. We're working around the clock with people like Aveen Sharma, David Libatique, Erica Calhoun, and so many others who have contributed their time and efforts, starting early in the mornings, all the way through late evenings, chasing down leads, trying to find better ways to do business for our hospitals. This is such important work. We're attempting to save lives. So if you can help us, please join. Again, that's lovela.org, LOVLA.org. And we thank you for your interest in our Port of Los Angeles and Logistics Victory Los Angeles. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Until next time, thank you.
This concludes today's news conference. The media will be advised of future updates. Thank you for joining us.